After I was reborn, I called in sick and skipped the family banquet. Lu Changyan got exactly what he wanted and asked to marry my legitimate elder sister. I turned around and accepted a marriage contract from the most powerful grand tutor in the empire. Ladies and gentlemen, a man arrives at the family banquet to propose. He takes one look at the elder sister and forgets the younger one exists. Asks for her hand that very night. The younger sister? She was upstairs with a fever she gave herself on purpose. Why would a woman drown herself in well water to catch a cold on the night her fiancé was coming? Settle in. Friends, the abacus is about to speak. The moment I returned to life. Spring rain was tapping against the window. I lay inside my carved canopy bed, staring at the faded narcissus embroidered above me. For a long while, I did not move, yet my fingertips still throbbed, as though the edge of that divorce letter from my last life had only just sliced across my skin. Lu Changyan had tossed it beside the account books. It contained a single sentence: "A merchant's daughter will never belong in respectable society." We had been married for 10 years. I paid the Lu family's debts, dragged their failing tea house back from ruin, and supported his mother, a woman who sneered at the vulgar stench of money, while swallowing century-old ginseng bought with mine. In the end, he left me nothing but the ledgers and threw me out. "My lady, young Master Lu, is coming tonight." Bao Chen held up a newly tailored spring dress in pale yellow, her face glowing with excitement. "The master says you must look your best. If this match goes through, you will become the wife of a Hanlin scholar." Lu Changyan. The name still made my chest tighten on instinct. Not from longing, my body simply remembered 10 years of cold looks, quiet contempt, and bottomless debts before my mind did. I let out a slow breath. "Bring me a basin of well water." Bao Chen blinked, "My lady." Now. A short while later, I poured the entire basin over my head. Cold punched straight into my bones. My teeth chattered, but I stayed beside the half-open window until I had sneezed several times in a row. Only then did I let Bao Chen help me back into bed. Her eyes turned red with panic. "Why would you do this to yourself?" I pulled the quilt tighter around me. My voice was already going hoarse. "A few days of sickness are better than a lifetime sentence." By nightfall, the chill had set in. Fever dragged me back into the final winter of my previous life. The Lu family gates slammed shut behind me. Snow covered my hair as I stood alone in the street, clutching my golden abacus. They had not even sent a carriage to return me to the Shen residence. From behind the gate, Lu Changyan told the steward, "She has always been good at business. She will figure something out." In the dream, I tried to scream, but no sound came. When I woke, Bao Chen had fallen asleep beside the bed. One hand still clutched the damp cloth she had used to cool my forehead. I watched her for a long moment, then gently draped a coat over her shoulders. In my last life, I had always believed that if I did a little more, gave a little more, endured a little more, I would eventually earn the Lu family's affection. But people who truly care for you do not wait until you become useful before stepping closer. That evening, Father stood outside my doorway, as if illness were something he might catch by breathing the same air. "Why did you have to fall sick today?" he snapped. "Young Master Lu rarely honors us with a visit." I coughed twice. "Your daughter is unfortunate. I will leave everything to Father." Satisfied by my obedience, he turned to go. Before he left, my elder sister, Shen Wansu, entered carrying ginger tea. She wore a lotus-pink spring robe with a white magnolia pinned in her hair. Every inch of her looked gentle, gracious, and perfectly rehearsed. "Rest well, little sister. I will attend the family banquet in your place tonight. If they serve anything delicious, I will have some sent to you." She had been the same in my previous life. She gave me pastries she had grown tired of, fabric she no longer wanted, and occasionally offered a few harmless words in my defense before Father. Back then, I had actually believed this was the greatest kindness a legitimate daughter could show a sister born to a concubine. I looked at her and said softly, "Be careful tonight, sister. do not misquote young Master Lu's poem. Her smile froze for a heartbeat, then returned as smooth as ever. You truly are delirious. After she left, I reached beneath my pillow and pulled out a golden abacus no larger than my palm. It had been part of my birth mother's dowry. In the entire Shen household, it was the only thing that had ever truly belonged to me. In my last life, it followed me into the Lu family. I used it to calculate 10 years of deficits until every bead gleamed from wear. Lu Changyan said it reeked of commerce and locked it away at the bottom of a chest. This time, I slid every displaced bead back into place. Their crisp clicks cut through the rainy night, a declaration 10 years overdue. From now on, this abacus would count for me alone. Near midnight, Nanny Joe rushed into the courtyard through the rain, grinning so widely she could barely contain herself. Second young lady, wonderful news. Young Master Lu and the eldest young lady traded poems at dinner. It was love at first sight. He asked for her hand on the spot. Bo Chin went pale and glanced at me carefully. My lady, I leaned against the cushions and felt, to my own surprise, genuinely relieved. There was still a trace of bitterness mixed into that relief. In my previous life, I had bent myself into knots to earn what I thought was love. Now I understood that, in Lu Changyan's eyes, I had only ever been the consolation prize when he could not have my sister. Good, I said. They suit each other. Tears gathered in Bao Chin's eyes. But the master clearly said young Master Lu was coming to meet you. Father has said many things. I straightened the hairpin that had slipped crooked in her hair. He said he would protect me. He said Mother Li would treat me like her own daughter. Tell me, which promise ever counted? Bo Chen bit her lip. I was not completely untouched. Watching the man who had once been my husband propose to another woman still pressed a needle into an old scar. But pain did not mean love, and it certainly did not mean I had to turn back. Some wounds ache when the weather changes. That does not mean they still get to choose your road. Nanny Joe had clearly come hoping to see jealousy. Finding none, she left in awkward disappointment. The next afternoon, Bao Chen stumbled into my room again, this time carrying a dark blue envelope patterned with clouds. My lady, someone has come from the Grand Tutor's residence. The seal bore the character she and Cinnabar read. I opened it. It was not a calling card. It was a marriage contract. A family of merchants may still produce rare talent. I, Shi Qingyuan, offer the position of lawful wife and ask for the hand of Shen Jiwei, second daughter of the Shen family. In my previous life, Shi Qingyuan had once seen the ledgers I organized for the Lu family tea house. He had left only 5 words. The accounts are cleanly done. Those 5 words had been among the very few acknowledgments I received during my long marriage. Lu Changyan had scoffed and said the Grand Tutor was merely being polite. So it had not been empty praise after all. I placed the marriage contract beside my golden abacus. Bao Chen spun around the room twice in delight, then abruptly stopped, worry returning to her face. The Grand Tutor is much older than you, and people say he is cold and severe. Are you truly going to marry him? I do not know yet. Then why were you smiling? I brushed my fingers across the dried red seal. Because this contract proves one thing. In my last life, I was never incapable. Lu Changyan simply refused to admit what I was worth. As for what Shi Qingyuan wanted from me, I would ask him myself. I had been given another life. I would not gamble the rest of it merely because a powerful man offered me a prestigious name. Outside, the spring rain finally stopped. For the first time, the road everyone had blocked in front of me seemed to brighten again. The Grand Tutor's proposal news that the Grand Tutor had proposed to me spread quickly. The Shen household went silent first. Then it exploded. Mother Li, father's lawful wife, was the first to storm into my courtyard. Several older servants followed at her heels. Where is the marriage contract? I handed it to her. She examined it from every angle, her expression darkening with every line. The Grand Tutor, a first-rank official, and the position of lawful wife. Her head snapped up. You are only a concubine's daughter. Why you? The words pricked like a needle. I knew that look too well, as though the circumstances of my birth made me naturally inferior, as though being noticed at all meant I had stolen someone else's good fortune. I pressed down the old pain and answered calmly. If mother suspects the document is false, she may ask the Grand Tutor's residence herself. I am asking why he would choose you of all people. Then that question belongs to the Grand Tutor, not me. Mother Lee opened her mouth, but no answer came. Her daughter had just secured a 7th-rank Hanlon scholar. She had assumed all the glory in the household would now belong to Shen Wansu. Then, in the blink of an eye, a first-rank Grand Tutor's marriage contract had landed in the hands of the unfavored younger daughter. As she turned to leave, she could not resist one final attack. Your sister's engagement has barely been settled, and you have already stolen the spotlight. Are you determined to outshine her? I covered my mouth and coughed. I was too sick to leave my room yesterday. Does the Grand Tutor now need sister's permission before proposing to me? Mother Lee's face turned iron gray. She swept out in fury. Father returned even faster. The man who normally avoided my courtyard sat beside my bed, holding the contract as if it were an imperial decree. His voice had become so gentle it bordered on flattering. Jouet, the Grand Tutor, has students and prot feifeis throughout the empire. Once you marry him, our Shen family will. Father, I cut him off. Why does the Grand Tutor want to marry me? He blinked. Because he values you, naturally. What does he value about me? Father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in more than a decade, he actually looked at me. He knew I could manage accounts. He knew the money left by my mother's family had helped keep the Shen household alive. Yet he had never once considered that I, as a person, might be worthy of respect. Sudden exhaustion washed over me. In my previous life, I spent years hoping he might one day love me as he loved my sister. Eventually, I learned that when a father remembers his daughter only when she becomes useful, that relationship is already a bad debt. The contract was sent to me, so I will visit the Grand Tutor myself, I said. My younger brother's examinations, and the Shen family's business, have nothing to do with this marriage. Father's expression stiffened, but he did not dare lose his temper. He only muttered that such matters could be discussed later. That evening, Shen Wansu sent over a plate of mung bean cakes with a note. I heard the Grand Tutor's residence sent you a card. Congratulations, little sister. A card, not a marriage contract. Baochan lowered her voice. Will you eat them, my lady? I stared at the cakes and remembered being 16. I had spent an entire day checking the household accounts, so hungry my hands shook. A shopkeeper saved me a plate of mung bean cakes. Shen Wansu glanced at them and said, "They smell wonderful." I gave her the whole plate. She ate too, decided they were too sweet, and let her maid throw the rest away. I walked home hungry that night, still telling myself that younger sisters were supposed to yield to their elders. You eat them, I said, looking away. From now on, do not bring anything she sends into my room. Baochan hesitated. Then she broke off a piece and placed it in my hand. Then have mine. I stared at her. She looked embarrassed. I cannot finish the whole plate by myself. The cake was lightly sweet. A smile touched my lips. I pushed the plate back toward her. Then we split it. Footsteps sounded outside. Shen Wansu had come in person. Her gaze landed first on the marriage contract, then on the cake in my hand. Her smile was tighter than usual. So it truly is a marriage contract. Didn't sister already congratulate me? Her fingers tightened around her handkerchief. The Grand Tutor holds enormous power. A marriage like this may have little to do with affection. You have never been skilled at courtly society. I am only worried that you will not survive the Grand Tutor's household. There is no need to worry. I met her eyes. If I cannot manage it, I will leave. I would never cling to a bad match simply because the title sounds impressive. Her face went white. At the time, she did not know I was not speaking about the Grand Tutor's residence. I was speaking about the Liu family she was about to marry into. She recovered quickly and smiled again. A superior marriage has certainly changed the way you speak. The marriage did not change me. I set down the cake. I simply decided I was done giving way. She stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. The younger sister, who had always followed half a step behind her, surrendering everything before she even asked, had moved somewhere beyond her reach. Once my illness passed, I visited the Grand Tutor's residence. Ji Qingyuan waited in an outer study. He wore a dark teal robe, his expression composed and unreadable. 3 account books lay neatly arranged on the desk. He came straight to the point. "Miss Shen, do you know why I sent that marriage contract?" I sat across from him. "A marriage contract is one matter, ledgers are another. Your Excellency wants to see whether I am capable of taking charge of these 3 businesses." One eyebrow shifted slightly. He pushed the ledgers toward me. I turned through several pages at speed. The Qingming tea house sells only rare, expensive leaves. It is bleeding money to protect its refined image. The Wangchun Press prints books for unknown writers without checking demand. So the storerooms are choking on unsold copies. The women at the Zishan workshop have skill, but no storefront and no name of their own. The more they produce, the more silver your residence loses. Zi Qingyuan asked. "What would you change?" "Split the tea house into 2 counters, one for luxury teas and one for affordable everyday blends. The press takes deposits before carving blocks and printing. The workshop's cloth becomes tea packaging and book covers. The women earn a share from their work instead of surviving on charity from the Grand Tutor's residence." Silence settled over the study. "How long would you need to develop this plan?" he asked. I already did. "And what would you need from me?" I did not answer at once. In my previous life, Liu Changyan had also claimed he was giving me control of the tea house. When I wanted to dismiss an old manager who was stealing, he said I had no loyalty. When I tried to reduce his mother's extravagant spending, he called me unfilial. When I proposed changing suppliers, he insisted that ancestral rules could not be touched. He had never wanted a manager. He wanted an unpaid servant who took no credit, earned no salary, and carried every scrap of blame when things went wrong. The memory chilled my fingertips, but I held Shi Qingyuan's gaze. "I need the authority to hire, dismiss, and move available funds. If I am responsible for the result, no one gets to tie my hands behind my back." Outside the study, a steward seemed to suck in a horrified breath. Ji Qingyuan did not hesitate. He removed a small green jade seal from his belt and slid it across the desk. This seal grants control over all staff and funds belonging to the 3 businesses. I looked at it without reaching out. "Your Excellency is not worried I will drive all 3 into the ground." "Number, why not?" "Because I chose you. If you succeed, I chose well. If you fail, I bear the consequence. I will not ask you to do the work and then make you stand alone when the cost comes due." He said it quietly. My throat tightened anyway. In my previous life, every success had proven Liu Changyan was a brilliant head of household. Every mistake had proven that I, a merchant's daughter, was incompetent. So this was what trust looked like. Not a casual, "I leave it to you," but a willingness to share the price of failure. I picked up the jade seal. 3 months. If the businesses do not improve, I take nothing. If they turn a profit, I want 10%. Zi Qingyuan asked, "Does that 10% belong to the marriage contract or the ledgers?" "The ledgers?" I paused. "I am still considering the marriage." "Very well." He did not press me. He did not use his rank to force an answer. I remained seated. "You still have not told me why you chose me." After a moment of silence, he said, 2 years ago, I saw you at the Shen family tea shop. I assumed he meant the ledgers. At the time, the manager miscalculated the tea tax and tried to blame a newly hired clerk. You knew exposing him would offend one of your family's senior retainers. You still reviewed 3 years of accounts and cleared the clerk's name. I stared at him. Even father had never known about that. Later, I read the books you had organized, he continued. Many people can calculate. Far fewer can see profit and loss clearly without using the powerless to plug a hole. So the Grand Tutor wants a capable wife. I want a wife who can stand beside me and still dare to tell me no. His voice remained calm, with none of the sweet promises poets like to scatter around women. Yet, I heard something rarer in his words. What if I ultimately refuse the marriage? The jade seal remains yours. Your share of the profits remains yours. You are not worried you will build a road for me and receive nothing in return? Talent should not be buried simply because a marriage does not happen. The armor around my heart did not melt, but for the first time, a hairline crack appeared in it. As I rose to leave, I asked one last question. An unmarried woman managing businesses for an unrelated man will attract gossip. The Grand Tutor's residence will handle the gossip, he said. None of it will be allowed to land on you. On the carriage ride home, I held the jade seal in my palm. It weighed less than my golden abacus, but it carried more weight than 10 years of labor from my previous life. The abacus was an old possession I had fought to protect. The seal was authority I had earned with my own ability. The golden abacus half a month later, the Liu family's betrothal gifts arrived at the Shen residence. 64 lacquered chests lined the courtyard in a respectable display. To an untrained eye, it looked grand. I noticed immediately that several sets of silverware were old designs, and the bolts of silk looked like stock that had been sitting in storage for years. The Liu family was still the same hollow shell I remembered. A Hanlon scholar's salary could not support their lifestyle. Their tea house had lost money year after year, and their farmland produced little. In my previous life, my dowry had filled every hole. Now Shen Wansu would take my place. The debts would not magically disappear just because the bride had changed. Mother Li understood none of that. She only complained that the jewelry was not new enough. Then her gaze drifted to the pouch at my waist. Jie, the golden abacus your mother left you is solid gold. Your sister is marrying. Surely you should add something to her dowry. Melt it down and have it made into a proper set of ornaments. It will help the Shen family save face. My fingers closed over the pouch. Vulgar money, unfit for respectable people. The old voices rose from my previous life, scraping across my chest like a reopened wound. Because they despised it, I had hidden away the most precious thing my mother left me. I had hidden my own talent with it. Not this time. Mother Li's expression darkened. What did you say? Shen Wansu spoke in her usual gentle voice. Little sister, because it is a keepsake from your mother, giving it would show even greater devotion to your elder sister. If you cannot bear to part with it, you need not speak so harshly. There she was again, all grace and innocence, saying she did not want it while waiting for someone else to snatch it on her behalf. I looked at her. There is a pair of white jade scepters in the storeroom. I will give those to sister. The abacus stays with me. Mother Li slapped the table. It is a gaudy tool used by shopkeepers, and you treat it like treasure. Someone take it from her. 2 older servants stepped forward. I pulled out my birth mother's dowry register and dropped it hard onto the table. The golden abacus is listed on page 3. It bears father's private seal and an official red deed. If mother believes a lawful wife may seize property left to a concubine's daughter by her birth mother, let us invite the clan elders and the magistrate to decide. The servants froze. At that exact moment, father entered. Mother Li immediately switched to tears and accused me of threatening her with the law. I handed father the register. Sister is marrying into the Liu family. Their betrothal gifts should provide her dignity. If the Shen family must melt down an heirloom left by her younger sister's mother, just to make her look respectable, people may start wondering whether the Liu family is too poor to provide its bride with proper jewelry. Father's eyes swept across the outdated silverware. His face changed. He might not care about my heirloom, but he cared deeply about the reputations of the Shen and Liu families. It belonged to your birth mother. Keep it yourself, he said coldly. Then he turned on Mother Li. Wansu's ornaments will be paid for from the household funds. What would people say if they learned you tried to seize her sister's property? I put away the dowry register. Only then did I realize my palm was slick with sweat. After we left the main courtyard, Bao Chen finally dared to ask, "Were you not afraid, my lady?" I was, she stared at me. I was afraid father would lock me away to protect the family name. I was afraid Mother Li would actually order them to use force. When I reached for the register, my legs were shaking. Bochin hurried to support me. "Then why did you still?" "Because fear is exactly why I had to speak." I steadied myself. Courage does not mean you cannot be hurt. It means you know it may hurt, and still refuse to hand yourself over. Through the pouch, I touched the abacus. I can be afraid, and still say no. If they take one thing without resistance, they will decide everything I own is theirs to claim. In my previous life, I believed refusal would bring the sky crashing down. Today I discovered the sky remained exactly where it was. The only thing that collapsed was their rule that I must always surrender whatever they wanted. That night, father came to see me again. He did not mention the abacus. Instead, he circled around the subject and explained that the Shen family had a large batch of aged tea. If the Qingming tea house sold it through its channels, both households would benefit. I asked Baoqin to bring me the Shen family's old ledgers and found the date that tea had entered storage. It has been sitting for 3 years. Father wants to sell stale leaves to the Grand Tutor's residence at the price of fresh tea? His smile stiffened. We are family. Must every copper be counted so carefully? Lu Changyan had said the same thing in my previous life. The words still stabbed, but this time I did not swallow my answer. When accounts are left unclear, the person called family is always the one expected to suffer the loss. I closed the ledger. If the Shen family sells at the fair market price for aged tea, I will handle it as business. If you expect me to use the Grand Tutor's money to cover the Shen family's losses, the answer is no. Father stared at me for a long while. At last, he understood. The Grand Tutor's proposal had not given the Shen family a ladder into greater power. It had given me the confidence to refuse them. Once I took control of the businesses, I spent nearly every day outside the residence. Manager Wu of the Qingming Tea House clung to its century-old reputation and refused to sell affordable loose-leaf tea. I did not dismiss him immediately. I placed the ledger of unsold aging stock in front of him. Prestige cannot be served for dinner. If Qingming keeps losing money, next year you will not even have a signboard left to defend. His pride took a beating, but he finally obeyed. Naturally, rain poured on the day we launched the new counter. From morning until evening, we sold 1 packet of floral tea. Baoqin paced circles around the counter. Manager Wu said nothing, but his face screamed. I told you so. I stood inside the empty shop and felt doubt creep in. Experience from my previous life did not guarantee success in this one. If I failed, I would lose more than the Grand Tutor's silver. I would lose the trust I had fought so hard to earn. Near dusk, Shi Qingyuan entered beneath an umbrella. How did today go? I told him the truth. 20 copper coins. Are you closing? I glanced at the curtain of rain outside. Give me another half hour. All right. He folded his umbrella, sat by the window, and picked up a book on tea. No blame, no hollow encouragement. He simply waited with me. The first time I introduced loose-leaf tea at the Lu family shop, it had also rained. When Lu Changyan returned home, his first words were, "I knew a sheltered woman like you could not run a business." Later, when the shop became profitable, he said only, "It should have happened sooner." I had once felt grateful merely because he did not continue insulting me. The memory made my chest ache. Not for Lu Changyan, but for the woman I had been. She had been afraid to hope for even ordinary decency. Just before the half-hour ended, a carriage stopped outside. The wife of the Imperial Academy Chancellor entered. She bought 10 packets of floral tea, admired the cloth wrapping made by the Jishan workshop, and immediately ordered her household to purchase tea from Qingming in the future. Manager Wu stared at the silver in his hands. The chancellor's residence is in the north of the city. Why would his wife happen to pass through the eastern district? I looked at Shi Qingyuan. His expression remained calm. He took no credit. Before leaving, he asked only, "Will you return tomorrow?" "Yes, good." After he left, Manager Wu lowered his voice. "Did you know Madam Sunday would come?" He looked stunned. "The Grand Tutor's residence can bring us our first customer," I said as I opened one of the tea packages Madam Sunday had purchased to inspect it. "It cannot keep every customer for us. We open as usual tomorrow. The price does not rise, and no one cuts corners on the cloth bags." Manager Wu studied me for a long moment, then gave me his first truly respectful bow. "The proprietor is right." Proprietor, the word stopped me for a heartbeat. I had worked at the Liu family tea house for 10 years, and everyone still called me Madame Liu. The profit belonged to the Liu family. The credit belonged to Liu Changyan. In this life, I finally had a title of my own. 3 months later, the Qingming tea house had tripled its profits. The Wangchun press had cleared nearly half its stagnant inventory. For the first time, the women of the Shan workshop were paid by the piece. On payday, a young widow clutched a handful of silver so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her eyes filled with tears. Proprietor Shen, before this, when the Grand Tutor's residence gave us rice, it was charity. This is different. I wove this with my own hands. I retied the cord on her loose purse. Money earned through skill belongs firmly in your hand. Hold on to it. She took out 2 copper coins and pressed them into my palm. These came from my pay for the first batch of cloth tea bags. You gave us a way to make a living. I want to buy you something sweet. I meant to refuse. Then I saw the nervous hope in her eyes and accepted. That evening, I truly used those 2 coins to buy 2 pieces of malt candy. One went to Baochen. I let the other melt slowly on my tongue. It was not an expensive sweetness, but I remembered it for years. I had once believed growing stronger meant hardening myself until no one could hurt me. Later, I learned that real strength meant protecting the soft parts of yourself while still being able to receive kindness when someone offered it. The young widow smiled through her tears. In that moment, I understood that I wanted more than to prove Liu Changyan had underestimated me. I wanted women who had once lived at another person's mercy, as I had, to gain the power to say no. As promised, Shi Qingyuan paid me 300 taels as my share of the profit. He also added a deed stating clearly that the money was my private property, and that no member of the Shen family could withdraw it. I smiled. Is the Grand Tutor still unafraid that I might wreck all 3 businesses? If you had, it would have meant I chose badly. The blame would still not have belonged to you alone. I laughed before I could stop myself. Shi Qingyuan looked up. A faint smile appeared in his eyes as well. The bill comes due the moment the business is stabilized. Mother Li came looking for me. Your sister has had a difficult time since marrying into the Liu family. Old Madame Liu's medicine is ruinously expensive, and the servants refuse to obey her. Give her 500 taels to get through this crisis. I do not have it. You just received your share of the profits. That is my money. Mother Li's face hardened. She is your own sister. I set down my teacup. Before the wedding, Mother told everyone that sister was born to be the wife of a Hanlin scholar. How strange. It has only been a few months, and this noble scholar's wife already needs the business earnings of her concubine-born sister to survive. Mother Li's face turned livid. With no answer, she stormed away. 3 days later, Shen Wansu returned to her childhood home in person. Her clothes were still exquisite, but she had grown noticeably thinner. Faint shadows lay beneath her eyes. She caught my hand, her voice trembling. Little sister, the Liu family accounts are a disaster. Old Madame Liu makes me stand attendance every day, but the cashier cannot even find enough money to replace the cook. Could you come and look through the books for me? Her hand was cold. I looked down at it, and I was not completely unmoved. When I was sick with fever as a child, she had once secretly brought me half a bowl of hot porridge. That small kindness had been real. But it was also true that she had taken what I wanted again and again. Believing it was only natural that I yield, I gently pulled my hand free. Number tears flooded her eyes. You know I was never taught these things. I am not like you. No, we are different. I looked at her steadily. You used to call ledgers crude and say an abacus stank of money. Now that the Liu family needs an unpaid accountant, you finally remember you have a younger sister. That is not what I meant. If the managers disobey, investigate them for theft. If the accounts are unclear, audit the old books line by line. If old Madame Liu demands servants, you are the mistress of the household. Set the rules. She began to cry. That is easy for you to say. There are hundreds of ruined ledgers. How long am I supposed to spend reading them? It is not easy. My voice was quiet, but I did not soften the answer for her. In my previous life, I spent 10 years holding the Liu family together. Since sister chose this wonderful marriage with her own hands, she should taste for herself how sweet it truly is. Shen Wansu stared at me. Your previous life? I lowered my eyes and lifted my teacup. I mean that even I could not sort everything out quickly. She did not press the point. Her crying only grew harder. Have you been waiting all this time to laugh at me? The question silenced me. I had imagined it. When I first returned to life, part of me had wanted her to fall into the mud the moment she entered the Liu household. I wanted proof that what she had stolen from me was never a blessing. Yet now that she sat before me, exhausted and frightened, I felt none of the triumph I had expected. I did not push you into the Liu family, I said. You accepted that marriage yourself. Refusing to clean up the wreckage is not revenge. I am simply done sacrificing myself. Her sobs gradually quieted. She might not understand the difference, but I had to. Otherwise, rebirth would mean nothing more than repeating the harm done to me, only with someone else as the victim. When she left, Mother Li gave her 300 taels to pour into the Liu family's bottomless pit. Bao Chen watched the carriage disappear. The eldest young lady does look rather pitiful. I was silent for a moment. That is exactly why I cannot help her. Some people must walk through the mud themselves before they understand what it cost the person who once stood in the rain for them. At the beginning of summer, a notice appeared announcing the sale of the Liu family tea house. The location was excellent. In my previous life, I spent 2 years saving it. Without my dowry and management, it survived only a few months before the debts crushed it. Shi Qingyuan handed me the notice. The price is low, it is worth buying. You do not mind that it once belonged to the Liu family. A business is judged by whether it is worth the price, not by the name of its former owner. 3 days after the Grand Tutor's residence announced its interest, Liu Changyin came in person. Months had passed, but he still wore a moon-white robe and a perfectly arranged headpiece. Dark shadows ringed his eyes, however, and the easy confidence I remembered was gone. I ordered tea to be served. What brings young Master Liu here? He considered his words for a long time. The tea house has belonged to the Liu family for 100 years. If the Grand Tutor's residence takes control, could the Liu family retain 20% of the profits? I opened the ledger. You owe the tea farmers 1,200 taels, the shipping guild 400, and another 300 for spoiled stock. The new owner must renovate the shop and rebuild its supply routes. The Liu family will contribute no capital and take no part in the work. On what grounds should you receive 20%? But the century-old name, a name that has lost money for 4 straight years, is worth no more than the old plank hanging above the door. His face tightened. Jai-wei, must you speak so ruthlessly? We may not have become husband and wife in this life, but once, we still. Once? What? I looked directly at him. Once, you came to the Shen residence to meet me and stared at my sister the entire evening. Or once, in our previous life, you married me and handed me a divorce letter 10 years later. All sound left him. My own chest, clenched speaking of that letter to his face, dragged old humiliation back to the surface. This time, however, I did not look away. I did not invent a graceful excuse to protect his dignity. He had no answer. After a long silence, he stared at me. My fingers paused against the page. The words pulled me back to my previous life. I had not been born without an edge. Every time I spoke, he answered with a cold face. Eventually, I learned to swallow every thought before it left my mouth. I have always been this person, I said. You simply never bothered to look. Lu Changyan went pale. At last, he spoke in a low voice. I know you were the one who saved the tea house in our previous life. The room fell utterly still. I remember that life too. He closed his eyes. I was reborn as well. After the confession, his shoulders seemed to lose their support. He told me what happened after Shen Wansu married him. In the first month, old Madame Lu erupted in fury when the household could no longer afford her medicines. In the second, the cashier ran away with their last working capital, and tea farmers crowded the gates demanding payment. In the third, Lu Changyan secretly pawned the paintings left by his father so he could maintain appearances at his literary gatherings. The cruelest part was his refined circle of friends. They had once visited the Lu residence to drink tea, compose poetry, and praise his indifference to wealth. The moment they heard about the debts, they all found excuses to stay away. Behind his back, they laughed that he could not even preserve his own family estate. Shen Wansu knew nothing about accounts, so she kept feeding her dowry into the hole. The 300 taels from Mother Li disappeared into old debts in less than 10 days. Old Madame Lu decided her new daughter-in-law had brought too little money. Every day, she compared Wansu to the virtuous wife I had been in the previous life. She said that if I had married you again, the Lu family would never have fallen this far. Lu Chengyan said. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. In my previous life, they despised my low birth and complained that I smelled of commerce. Now that I was no longer there to pay their debts, they repackaged my sacrifice as virtue and used it to torment another woman. The Lu family had never truly respected anyone. They respected only the person willing to give endlessly without ever presenting a bill. As though he had finally found a way to explain himself, Lu Chengyan began speaking faster. When I returned, I only wanted to correct my greatest regret. In our previous life, I always believed that if I had married Wansu, both my life and the Lu family would have been different. I did not realize that changing the wife would not erase the debts, cure your mother, or stop a corrupt manager from stealing. I finished for him. He closed his eyes. You thought a wife was a vase displayed in the main hall, I said. Replace it with a prettier one, and the whole house would somehow improve. Only when the vase could not calculate your accounts, repay your debts, or care for your mother. Did you remember why the old one had never been allowed to make a mistake? I did not treat you like a vase. Of course not. My voice was flat. You treated me like an accountant. At least accountants receive wages. I did not. His revelation had not shocked me. The night of the family banquet, he had asked for Shen Wansu without hesitation. I guessed the truth then. In our previous life, she had always been the woman he truly wanted. She kept him waiting for half a year, too proud to wait longer. He settled for me. When he was reborn, he believed missing his true love had been his only mistake, so he rushed to marry her. He never once asked where the Lu family's comfort and prestige had come from. You remembered me only after the tea house collapsed, I said. His throat moved. How much did you put into the Lu family in our previous life? 73,200 taels. The number hit him like a physical blow. He fell back into the chair. I listed every expense, working capital for the tea house, principal for the estate, old Madame Lu's medicines, debts to tea farmers and cloth merchants, 3 disastrous obligations left by his father, 2 shops, 1 country estate, 1,200 taels from my private reserve, and every coin I earned afterward. His fingers slowly clenched. Why did you never tell me? For one absurd second, I wanted to laugh. The first time I repaid one of your debts, I had the cashier send a note of obligation to your study. You said husband and wife should not count money so carefully. You accused me of smelling like a merchant, then tore it apart in front of me. He remembered. The last trace of color vanished from his face. That note had been the final attempt of my previous self to preserve proof that something belonged to her. He did not even read it before tearing it to pieces. After that, every contribution I made became something the family believed it deserved. Lu Changyan had imagined himself noble and untouched by vulgar money. He believed he had never spent mine. Only when the Lu family's true foundation was exposed in this life did he understand that his refinement had been built on my dowry, my labor, and 10 years of my life. Zhuwei, his voice was rough. Do you hate me? He leaned forward as though reaching for the last piece of wreckage in a flood. If I had not married Wansu in this life, if I had married you again, I know I was wrong now. I would give you full control of the accounts. I would make Mother respect you. I would. The promises came too late and revealed that he still understood nothing. You still do not get it. He went rigid. I never wanted another chance to manage your household. I never wanted to wait for your permission to use my own talent. I spoke each word clearly. What I wanted was a life that no longer revolved around the Lu family. His lips trembled. What you call making amends would put me back in the same place with a promise that you might treat me more kindly this time. I do not want that place anymore. The old debt. I did not answer his question at once. I had hated him in my previous life. On the winter night, he cast me out. I walked through the snow holding my golden abacus and wished that, if another life existed, he would one day learn what it felt like to be trampled beneath someone else's feet. Now he sat before me stripped of his tea house and his precious dignity, finally understanding where he had gone wrong. I felt none of the satisfaction I had imagined. Only exhaustion, the kind that comes when a burden carried for far too long is finally set down. I do not hate you anymore, I said. That is not forgiveness. You simply are not worth another piece of my heart or another hour of my life. The light in Lu Changyan's eyes slowly went out. I pushed the purchase agreement across the table. The Grand Tutor's residence will assume every debt and buy the tea house at fair market value. The Lu family retains no share of future profits. He did not move for a long time. At last, he drew the tea house seal from his sleeve and placed it on the desk. Its wooden edges had been worn smooth. In my previous life, I gripped that seal through countless sleepless nights. Yet no one ever admitted the tea house carried my labor. Now Lu Changyan had finally delivered it into my hands himself. It had become nothing more than an old asset waiting to be settled. I did not touch it. I signaled the steward to collect it. When Lu Changyan saw that, the last trace of hope in his eyes broke apart. Perhaps only then did he understand. I was buying a shop worth rebuilding. I was not buying an excuse to begin again with him. We will do it your way, he said. At the doorway, he stopped. Only today did I understand that the peace I enjoyed in our previous life did not come from my ability. It was not something I could have had no matter whom I married. I gave no answer. The door opened and closed. A strip of daylight briefly crossed the floor. The Lu family tea house changed hands that day, and the debt no one had ever acknowledged in my previous life was finally confessed by the man who owed it. When the purchase was completed, I went to the tea house myself. As the old signboard came down, tea farmers and boatmen crowded the street. Each of them finally paid. Some checked their banknotes again and again. Others stood in public with tears reddening their eyes. Lu Changyan came as well. He remained outside the crowd and watched the sign reading, Lu Family Tea House descend. Then he watched the new Qingming sign rise above the entrance. In our previous life, he needed only to recite a poem at a literary gathering to receive applause. No one knew about the nights I stayed awake, the tea mountains I crossed, or the dowry I poured into his family's survival. In this life, he saw it at last. A business does not stand because of the surname above its door. It stands because someone supports it with money, judgment, and countless nights without sleep. Manager Wu asked me to record the first entry in the new books. I took out my golden abacus and moved the first bead in full view of Lu Changyan. The old debts are cleared. The new accounts begin today. The beads clicked sharply. Lu Changyan remained there for a long while, then left alone before the crowd dispersed. I did not follow his face with my eyes. Winning had never meant staring at how badly the loser had fallen. Winning meant that, at last, I had a new ledger that belonged to me. A marriage with an exit. My wedding was set for early autumn. The matrons sent by Shi Qingyuan did not teach me how to flatter my future husband. They asked what patterns I liked, what dishes I wanted at the banquet, and what flowers should be planted outside the bridal chamber. Every choice was mine. In the end, I accepted the marriage. But I set 3 conditions. My dowry would remain mine. My business profits would remain mine. The Shen family could not use the grand tutor's name for its own affairs. And after 3 years, if I wanted a divorce, Shi Qingyuan would not stop me. When father heard the 3rd condition, he slammed his hand on the table. What woman enters a marriage already planning how to leave it? What will become of the Shen family's reputation if this gets out? In front of him, Shi Qingyuan calmly took the agreement and put it away. I am the one asking to marry her. Therefore, I should be the one to give her a road out. Official Shen need not concern himself with the dignity of the grand tutor's household. Father fell silent at once. I stood nearby, feeling more than triumph. Before my wedding in the previous life, I had secretly hoped Lu Changyan might defend me before his elders. Just once, I waited 10 years and never saw it. Shi Qingyuan did it as naturally as breathing. For a moment, the simple act nearly brought me to tears. I forced them back. Not because I was unmoved, but because I had not yet learned how to let another person see me vulnerable. Shi Qingyuan did not ask for an explanation. He simply pressed his seal onto the agreement. After the wedding, I continued visiting the shops, inspecting ledgers, and meeting managers. No one in the Grand Tutor's residence declared that a woman appearing in public was improper. Shi Qingyuan never questioned the silver in my hands. When I worked too late, he sent hot tea and a slip of paper bearing 2 words: rest early. That did not mean my defenses vanished. During the first month of our marriage, I caught a severe chill. When I woke and saw Shi Qingyuan beside the bed, my first question was whether the month-end ledgers had arrived. He frowned. You have a fever. The books must be closed at the end of the month. If they are closed one day late, the Grand Tutor's residence will not collapse. The reply escaped me before I could stop it. If there is a mistake, people will say I am incompetent. Zi Qingyuan was silent for a moment. Then he placed the medicine bowl in my hands. There are no people here. There is only me. Even if a mistake exists, you will recover first and calculate it afterward. The medicine was bitter enough to curl my tongue. Halfway through, my face betrayed me. Shi Qingyuan reached into his sleeve and produced a candied fruit. I laughed at the sight. Does the Grand Tutor carry sweets everywhere? The steward said you dislike bitter medicine. I am not afraid of bitterness. Of course not, he said without changing expression. I am the one afraid my wife will pour the medicine into the flower pot. Caught. I felt a rare flush of embarrassment. That day, I admitted in front of him for the first time that I could fear bitterness. I could become tired. I was not an iron abacus that would calculate forever without breaking. Sometimes, the kinder he was, the more uneasy I became. Me previous life had taught me that respect offered by a man today might become a receipt he presented tomorrow, demanding payment. Then, one winter evening, I found a warm paper parcel of mung bean cakes in the courtyard. How did Your Excellency know I liked these? I saw you 2 years ago. That day at the tea shop, I had worked without food from morning until night. When I finally received a plate of cakes, Shen Wansu said only that they smelled wonderful, and I gave her every one. Did she ever ask whether you wanted to eat them? Shi Qingyuan asked. I had no answer. He pushed the parcel toward me. Here! You never have to give up your share. I took one bite. Sweetness dissolved over my tongue, and my eyes suddenly stung. It was not because of a cake. It was because someone had finally noticed how often I placed myself last. I offered him one. You eat 2. He frowned. Too sweet. Then eat half. He accepted it and finished the half with exactly the pained expression I expected. I laughed. The tips of his ears quietly turned red. For the first time, I wondered whether our marriage might become something more than a partnership. Half a year later, heavy snow sealed the city. Shi Qingyuan placed our 3-year divorce agreement in front of me. Can this clause be voided? My heart plunged. Do you want a divorce? For once, panic cracked his composure. When did I say I wanted one? Then why? Jiwei. His voice was low and rough. I do not want to let you leave after 3 years. After saying it, he offered no further defense. He looked like a man who had placed the most vulnerable piece of himself on the table and could do nothing but wait for judgment. I suddenly remembered everything he had never asked of me. He had never questioned whether I could bear him children. He had never demanded that I abandon business to become a proper grand tutor's wife. The person he wanted to keep was not a woman who could manage his household. It was me. Charcoal snapped in the brazier. As I stared at the agreement, warmth gathered in my palms. He had not forbidden me to go. He had not used gratitude as a chain. Even now, he was still asking whether I wished to stay. I picked up the agreement and walked toward the brazier. Ji Qingyuan rose at once. What are you doing? The paper dropped into the flame. The ink vanished beneath fire. The escape route is gone. I turned to him. The grand tutor is not allowed to regret this later. He still asked, Are you certain? I am. I did not stay because I had nowhere else to go. I stayed because he had given me a road out, and that freedom made me willing to walk back to him by choice. Shi Qingyuan raised his hand, but stopped before touching my cheek. I took it myself and pressed his palm to my face. His hand was warm and careful. Snow raged beyond the windows. The charcoal burned bright inside. We made no grand vows. We simply stood beside each other for a long time. Some feelings do not need to fill an entire page. A person who allows you to remain yourself has already said more than 1,000 declarations of love. 2 years later, Qingming had become the busiest tea business in the Eastern District. The Zishan workshop grew from a dozen weavers to more than 80. Some saved enough to return home and open shops of their own. With printing on demand and brocade book covers, the Wangxun Press became a favorite destination for the scholars of Linan. Outside the residence, people called me Proprietor Shen. Inside it, they called me Madam Father, sent people several times asking me to return and manage the Shen family's shops. I offered advice at the ordinary market rate. I did not take control. I did not contribute silver. At first, Mother Li accused me of abandoning my birth family. When she realized the Grand Tutor's residence would never pressure me on the Shen family's behalf, she gradually went quiet. The Shen family did not collapse because it lost my sacrifice. It simply learned that its own deficits were its own responsibility. At times, I wondered whether the woman I had been in my previous life might have saved 10 years if she had understood that sooner. But life offers very few early warnings. Rebirth had not given me a heart of stone. It had given me one more chance to choose. The apology one day, I went to a literary gathering in the Western District to deliver samples of our new book covers. Near a grove of plum trees, I met Lu Changyan again. He had grown thinner. A cup of plain tea still rested in his hand, but the old arrogance of a man supposedly above worldly concerns was gone. I had heard that debt forced him to learn how to read accounts. Shen Wansu remained trapped in the Liu household, struggling daily with old Madame Liu and the servants. She had not left, and she had never asked me for help a second time. Perhaps she had begun to understand that the dignity of a household mistress cannot be held up by beautiful clothes alone. Lu Chengyan stopped 3 paces away. Jiwei, I frowned slightly. Young Master Liu. He understood the distance in that title. After a moment, he said, I should never have written those words in the divorce letter. A merchant's daughter will never belong in respectable society. The sentence had branded itself onto my heart. Even after rebirth, I had sometimes imagined standing high enough one day to force him to admit he had been wrong. Now that the day had arrived, my chest still tightened. Not because I cared for him. Because the woman who had once walked out of the Liu gates, clutching an abacus, was finally receiving the justice she deserved. Lu Changyan lowered his head. It was not true. I was narrow-minded and incapable, and I blamed your birth for my own failures. I am sorry. I watched him for a long time before speaking. You should say that to the Shen Jiwei from our previous life. His eyes reddened. She is gone. Then your apology is late. My own eyes grew warm as the words left me. It was not grief for Lu Changyan. I was saying farewell to the woman I had been. She had wanted so desperately for someone to tell her that she was not wrong, that her birth was not a stain, that her sacrifices were not an obligation everyone else had the right to collect. She died before anyone said it. The woman I was now could hear his apology, but I could not casually grant forgiveness on behalf of the woman who never lived to receive it. Lu Changyan swayed slightly. You cannot forgive me. Whether I forgive you no longer matters. My voice was calm. I did not build a good life to prove anything to you. Your regret is not my reward. A plum blossom loosened in the wind and landed on his shoulder. At last, he understood. The harshest punishment was not my hatred. It was that he had spent 2 lifetimes learning my worth, and by the time he did, my life had nothing to do with him. Does the Grand Tutor treat you well? He asked at last. Very well. Lu Changyan nodded. He gave me a formal, solemn bow, then turned away. I did not look back after leaving the plum grove. I stopped where no one could see me. The wind made my eyes sting. I wiped away the trace of moisture that escaped. Baochen asked no questions. She only drew my cloak more tightly around my shoulders. Come, I said. Let us go home. The word startled me as soon as I spoke it. Somewhere along the way, the Grand Tutor's residence had stopped being merely the destination named on a marriage contract. The light left on by the time I returned. Night had fallen. Baochen waited at the inner gate and handed me a dark blue card patterned with clouds. The paper was identical to the paper used for the marriage contract years ago. The lower corner still bore Xie Qingyuan's cinnabar seal. I opened it. Grand Tutor's wife is requested to return home for dinner. No reading ledgers, no touching the abacus. If she does not appear within half an hour, this official will personally retrieve proprietor Shen from Qingming. I burst out laughing. When I opened the study door, Xi Qingyuan sat beneath the lamplight. Several simple dishes from Zhangyan covered the table, along with a plate of freshly baked mung bean cakes. He handed me bamboo chopsticks. He did not ask what Lu Changyan had said. He only informed me, the food has been reheated 3 times. Does the Grand Tutor truly need an official cloud-patterned card just to invite his wife to dinner? An ordinary message cannot summon proprietor Shen, who earns gold by the day. I broke 1 mung bean cake in half. 1 piece stayed with me. The other went into his dish. He frowned. Too sweet. You have eaten them for 2 years. You still are not used to them. Number. Then why do you eat one every time? Xi Qingyuan lifted the half cake with a perfectly composed expression. My wife gave it to me. However sweet it is, I must eat it. Lamplight settled in his eyes. I lowered my head and smiled. That night, I placed the card summoning me home into a sandalwood box beside the original marriage contract. My mother's golden abacus lay beside them. In my previous life, it witnessed me spend myself empty to preserve someone else's dignity. In this life, it witnessed me protect what belonged to me, reclaim authority over my own future, and learn that love did not need to be purchased with sacrifice. Wone marriage contract acknowledged where I came from. Wone invitation home kept a lamp burning for my return. Rebirth did not transform me into someone endlessly correct or permanently hard. Old words could still wound me. Failure could still frighten me. I could still feel a moment of tenderness for the sister who once brought me half a bowl of hot porridge. A single mung bean cake could still make my eyes sting. The difference was that I now allowed myself to feel without allowing those feelings to make my decisions. The place I had finally earned in the world did not come from becoming the Grand Tutor's wife. It did not come from Lu Changyan's belated regret. It came from the businesses I restored with my own hands, from the women who received silver for their own skill, from learning to say no without shame, and learning that I could still be soft with someone who deserved that softness. The night breeze outside was cool. The food in the study was still warm. I closed the box and turned toward the lamp that had been left burning to guide me home. Ah, my friends, let us talk about that basin of well water. She poured it over her own head and stood by an open window until she was shaking. Baochen was terrified, and Jiwei said, "A few days of sickness are better than a lifetime sentence." She had already served that sentence, 10 years of marriage to a man who used her dowry, her talent, and her sleepless nights, then handed her a divorce letter that read, "A merchant's daughter will never belong in respectable society." So when Lu Changyan walked into the banquet and fell for the elder sister all over again, she let him go. No tears. No fight. Just quiet relief and one needle of old pain she refused to let steer her. Some wounds ache when the weather changes. That does not mean they still get to choose your road. The golden abacus is what breaks me. Her birth mother's only heirloom, small enough to hide in a pouch. Lu Changyan had locked it away because it reeked of commerce. Mother Li tried to melt it into jewelry for the elder sister's dowry. Everyone in her life treated her greatest inheritance as something vulgar to erase. And she said no, legs shaking, palms slick with sweat. She pulled out the legal deed and dared them to take it to court. The sky did not fall. The only thing that collapsed was their assumption that she would always surrender. Xi Qingyuan's proposal was not romance. It was a job interview, and that is exactly why it worked. 3 failing businesses on the desk. A jade seal slid across the table. If you fail, I bear the consequence. I will not ask you to do the work, and then make you stand alone when the cost comes due. In 10 years with Lu Changyan, no one had ever shared the weight of failure with her. Every success proved the Lu family was well managed. Every mistake proved a merchant's daughter was unfit. Xi Qingyan laid out the opposite deal: succeed together or fail together. That single sentence was worth more than a decade of poetry Lu Changyan never wrote for her. The rainy day at Qingming Tea House, 20 copper coins, 1 lonely packet of floral tea sold in an entire day. Manager Wu's face said everything, and Xi Qingyuan walked in, folded his umbrella, sat by the window, and read a book. No blame, no hollow encouragement. He simply waited with her. Lu Changyan would have said, "I knew a sheltered woman like you could not run a business." Xi Qingyuan said, "Will you return tomorrow?" She said yes. That was enough. The 73,000 taels when she finally listed the number out loud. Lu Changyan fell back in his chair like a man who had been punched. 2 shops, 1 country estate, 1,200 taels from her private reserve. Every coin she earned afterward, and his response, back in their first life. He tore up the only receipt she ever wrote, because husband and wife should not count money so carefully. That is not generosity. That is a man making sure there is no paper trail when he bleeds you dry. And the 3-year divorce clause. She entered marriage already holding the key to the exit. Her father called it shameful. Xi Qingyuan said, "I am the one asking to marry her, therefore I should be the one to give her a road out." He did not trap her with gratitude. He did not demand trust she had not yet built. He simply left the door unlocked and waited to see if she would choose to stay. When she burned that paper in the brazier, that was not weakness. That was a woman who had been given freedom, and discovered she no longer needed the escape route. Choosing to stay when you are free to leave is the only version of loyalty that means anything. The mung bean cake 2 years earlier, she gave an entire plate to her sister and walked home hungry. Now she split one in half, kept her piece, gave him the other. He said, "Too sweet," and ate it anyway. A small thing. But in a story about a woman who spent a lifetime putting herself last, keeping half a cake was an act of revolution. Vera's pole the well water. She made herself sick to avoid a man everyone said she should want. Desperate, or the clearest decision in the story. The abacus, they tried to melt it. She pulled out the deed, hands shaking, legs weak. She still said no, brave, or simply tired of losing pieces of herself. The jade seal, authority over staff and funds, handed without hesitation. Trust, or the rarest thing a powerful man can offer. The rainy day, 20 copper coins, 1 packet sold. He folded his umbrella and sat beside her without a word. Comfort, or the quietest kind of respect. The divorce clause. She entered marriage with an escape route. He let her keep it for 3 years. When she burned it, was that love or freedom choosing to stay? The mung bean cake. She split it in half and kept her peace. A small thing or everything? Tell me, friends, if a man handed you a divorce letter that said, "You will never belong," and then life gave you a second chance, would you fight to prove him wrong? Or would you build a life so full that his opinion simply ceased to matter? Until next time.